Hello and welcome everyone. Have you ever had a craving for tender, fluffy biscuits, but every recipe you try turns out like sad, rubbery hockey pucks? I know I have. So today on Andrew's Treats and Eats, let's take a bite out of how to bake better biscuits. Now let's get started. As a quick note here, today we're talking about American style biscuits, not British biscuits, which are called cookies on this side of the pond. In my opinion, good biscuits should be light, fluffy, and tender, but they should also be able to hold their shape and act as a base for toppings. When smothered with jam, they make a nearly perfect sweet treat. A large factor in the success of biscuits is the type of fat that you're using. One key fact is that the fat needs to be cold. Very, very cold. Whether you're using lard, shortening, or butter, we want the fat to hold its shape and not dissolve away into the dry ingredients. It's very similar to how rough puff pastry is prepared. With all of that out of the way, let's take a look at what you'll need for today's recipe. 3 level cups of all-purpose flour, 3 level tablespoons of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar, though this is optional. You'll also need 3/4 of a cup of cold butter cut into rectangular chunks, or you can use 1.5 sticks of butter if you have access to them. For the wet ingredients, you'll need 1 large egg and 1 cup of milk. Any milk is fine. I like whole milk as it adds some extra richness to the biscuits. If you want to make buttermilk biscuits, then be sure to exclude the cream of tartar from the dry ingredients. You'll also want a fairly large work surface, a large mixing bowl, a round cutter or small drinking glass, a box grater or other coarse cheese grater, a cookie sheet or baking sheet, and optionally a rolling pin. Now when I say cold butter, I mean ideally butter that has been in the fridge all night cold. Or if you want the absolute coldest butter possible, make sure to put it in the freezer for a few hours before making the biscuits. Just make sure if you're doing the latter that you cut the butter into rectangular chunks before you freeze it. You might also be wondering, why are we adding cream of tartar? Doesn't baking powder contain cream of tartar already? Why yes it does. The extra acid from the additional cream of tartar helps make the dough a bit more acidic, which adds a slight tanginess mimicking buttermilk biscuits and helps make sure there is no slight soapy taste to your biscuits. The slight soapy taste can happen when you're using old baking powder that is broken down a bit. The extra cream of tartar can be left out completely, but I like to leave it in just to be safe. Also, if you're using buttermilk for your milk, be sure to leave out the cream of tartar. Buttermilk contains plenty of lactic acid, and that will have the same effect. First things first, we want to preheat our oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit or 232 degrees Celsius. Why can't we all agree that both of these temperature scales are silly and just use Kelvin? I bake my biscuits at 505 Kelvin. That sounds so much fancier, doesn't it? I've said it before and I'll say it again, the secret to this recipe is cold. Very cold butter. So if you haven't already, then cut your 3/4 of a cup of butter into rectangular chunks and pop them into the freezer while we measure out the other ingredients. If you did this step ahead of time, you get bonus points. Congratulations. If you want to cheat a little bit at measuring, you can also take a pound of butter and cut it lengthwise twice, and then take 1.5 of those sticks. It's essentially the same as using pre-made stick butter. Now combine your dry ingredients in a bowl and whisk them gently with a fork to make sure that they're nicely and evenly mixed. Now is where the grater comes into play. We're going to grate our butter into the dry ingredient mixture. This is going to save us a lot of time and a lot of effort if we were using a pastry cutter or a butter knife. Now I recommend wearing gloves while doing this, as the gloves will help keep the butter from melting as fast when it's in contact with your hands. Also, butter is slippery, so be careful. Nobody wants chunks of fingers in their biscuits. Once the butter is all grated, it's time to break it up and incorporate it into the dry ingredients. Gently rub the flour and butter between your hands. You want to break up the grated butter so that there are roughly pea-sized chunks throughout the flour. After the butter is nicely incorporated, pop it into the freezer for a moment while you prepare your egg and milk mixture. Whisk the egg into the milk. You can also take this time to grease or line a baking pan with parchment so that it's ready when we need it shortly. While we're waiting for the flour and butter to chill, this is the perfect time to bash the like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so that you're notified of future Andrew's Treats and Eats videos. Just one last quick aside, you can also easily turn these into cheese biscuits at this stage as well. Simply grate out roughly 2 cups of cheddar cheese, more or less to taste, and toss it into the flour mixture, making sure that every bit of the cheese is coated with flour. Then proceed to the next step. Now we're going to add the liquids to the dry ingredients and gently mix just until they are combined. The dough is probably going to be fairly sticky here, and that is normal. Next, turn the dough out onto a well-floured surface. If the dough is too sticky to work by hand, lightly dust it with some flour. Then begin folding the dough. We're going to fold roughly between 8 and 15 times, or just until it forms a cohesive mass. We're not looking to develop much gluten here. Pat or roll the dough out until it is between 1/2 inch and 1 inch thick, which is roughly between 1 1/4 and 2.5 centimeters. The thicker you make the biscuits, the more they will puff vertically, but the fewer biscuits you will be able to make. So it's going to be a trade-off there. Now, using the round cutter or a glass, cut out the biscuits. If you're using a glass, then pressing down firmly and evenly will cause the air inside the glass to help release the dough without any poking or prodding needed. Next, place the biscuits on the tray you prepared earlier. If you want extra brown tops on your biscuits, you can take a moment here to brush a bit of milk, cream, or melted butter on them before setting them in the oven. Finally, we're going to bake the biscuits for 10 to 15 minutes or until golden brown on top. Always start with the lesser amount of time and add more if needed. My favorite part about this recipe is how quick it is compared to most of my other baking ventures. I always have a pound of butter in the fridge or freezer, so that's never a problem. In somewhere around half an hour to 45 minutes, I can have delicious hot biscuits fresh from the oven to smother with jam or have with scrambled eggs and cheese, really whatever I like. Hopefully this video has helped bolster your better biscuit baking. If you do try out this recipe, feel free to @ me on Instagram or Twitter with your results. I would love to see how it turns out for everyone. If you have any comments or suggestions for recipes you want me to try or things you want to see me make, be sure to leave them below in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and share this video because every like and share helps a ton with the ever-fickle YouTube algorithm. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Andrew's Treats and Eats.